Hey, everybody. Tom Block, Keith Jones, the Front Row Noles guys here on the Osceola.com. All right, KJ. Clock's still ticking. Still don't have a coach. Apparently one's coming.
But we will. We will.
I am, maybe it's the old guy coming out in me. Maybe I've been down this road before, even though we haven't a lot at Florida State. Maybe it's that I'm maybe a little more patient. I don't view this as a failed
Not at all.
search. And I hate that the story has gotten to that. We got to let whoever the coach is, and we'll talk about who it likely is momentarily. How about we let them show up, talk, coach, and then we'll evaluate.
How about everybody who's ready to jump off the cliff understand one specific thing? When Coburn said, we will have an announcement, hope to have an announcement by the end of the season or the end of the month, he was speaking to 15 to 20 to 25 specific individuals. Now, you and I disagree with this, but he was speaking to Florida State's commitments and the guys that still had Florida State high on their recruiting list. He was not speaking to the media. He was not speaking to the fan base. He was speaking specifically to those recruits, saying, don't do anything. We're going to have an announcement for you. It wasn't that he fully, in my opinion, that he fully expected to make the announcement of the head coach. It was that he was speaking to those recruits to try to keep them at bay and keep them from making other decisions. And now that we've gotten into it, particularly now that it appears we're waiting until after a championship game, then that would lend one to believe that whoever it is involved in a championship game, because out of protocol, that's the way you would do it.
And the assumption and what everybody is pretty much zeroing in on now is Mike Norvell from Memphis. So two things here. One area we are in agreement. After the Bob Stoops thing played out, to me there has not been anybody that's been mentioned that was going to create and force a line for season tickets until you see the product on the field. Right. So, if it is Mike Norvell, that may not mean that your season ticket sales shoot up, but you got to let the guy coach a game. And the second part I would say, though, so he is going to have to overcome that. And then there's also the fact that he's not coming from a Power 5 school, which may or may not be significant. We don't know. Any of these folks are a gamble. Are not a sure thing is a better way to put that.
The analogies, and you have to go down a number of things, but the two that I always bring out, our listeners have heard this before, is when Florida went out and they brought in Urban Meyer. He had not coached as a head coach at the Power 5 level, at least within that context. The same thing with Donovan when they brought him in as a basketball coach. They went out on a limb, they did their research, they did their vetting, whether you like them or don't like them, they both came in and they had success.
Yeah.
Norvell is of that same caliber. He's still young. He hasn't had that much experience. So you can't say, well, we want someone who's been a head coach at 3 different Power 5 schools, because that person would be 88 years old. The other thing about Stoops that I applaud Coburn and Thrasher about is that was a real long shot. I mean, they could have very easily have said, no, we're not even going to waste our time. He retired. He said he was burned out. He doesn't want to come back to college coaching. Why should we even fool with it? But they felt like they may have a small window, so they took it. I applaud them for that. That's not a failure. A failure, is when you don't do something. I would much prefer someone make an effort and it not work out. It doesn't mean Norvell's your second choice. It means it was two separate things. You were going after a big home run, and now you're back to doing your vetting and going after someone that may be a little bit under the radar that you believe you can bring in at a reasonable price with a reasonable thing and then make it work.
Yeah, and the reality is, going back to, I used the word gamble, but I'm just saying you don't know. So Florida State's been unconventional. The guy who had never been a head coach that a lot of people weren't enamored with won a national title here in Jimbo Fisher. And the guy that a lot of people were enamored with that had been a head coach at multiple places, including a Power 5 school at Oregon, is Willie Taggart, and he lasted 21 games. And the reality is, coaches all over make so much money, they don't have to jump. I mean, Florida's got Mississippi State's head coach right now. And prior to that, they had Colorado State's head coach. And their best coach came from Duke, and now Duke's a Power 5 school, and I know he was one of their own. So you don't know. I mean, maybe a better way to put it is Kirby Smart was an assistant coach. Dabo Swinney was a receivers coach. Ed Orgeron
not even a coordinator.
Was an interim coach. Texas hired the coach from Houston, a non-Power 5. Now, granted, it was Tom Herman. I mean, you can look at all these, and outside of maybe Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh, who were pro coaches coming back, none of them are big splashes, because guys that are in major Power 5 jobs where you can win a title, they stay there.
Yeah, Stoops was at Oklahoma for, 17, 18 years.
The biggest takeaway is we won't know
until we know.
And that's going to take a year or two. It's not going to be this weekend. It's not going to be the booster tour. It's not going to be next year's opener against West Virginia. Maybe next year at this time we'll have a feeling one way, but it's going to be or the other. But it's going to be a couple years.
The last thing I'd add, and I've said this several times in things that we've done, so you can roll your eyes. I understand, but
I usually do.
yep, the vetting in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I use the age-old thing. We've used it on the air. People have heard me say this a number of times. But Jim Gladden, one of the best recruiters at Florida State history, probably the greatest recruiter at Florida State history because he brought me to Tallahassee. He would go visit a prospect at the high school, and he'd talk to the head coach, and then he'd go talk to the principal. What kind of guy is Tom Block? What's he involved in? What's he do? What's he thought of? Then he'd go find the guidance counselor. What's Tom interested in? What is his favorite subject? What does he excel in? By the way, who's Tom's favorite teacher? And he'd go talk to that teacher. What's Tom like in class? Does he show up on time? Does he participate? Is he always here? Is he cheating? What kind of guy? Well, had one meeting with the head coach and 3 meetings with other people in the vetting process.
Right.
And that's the background work that I believe Coburn and Thrasher have done. I think that's the vetting process that the recruitment brings in, where you can look at
the search firm. Yeah.
Yeah, the search firm. Thank you. You can look at all the things that make this coach up. Yeah, there's no guarantees, but here's what's strong, here's what's weak, and you make your decision based upon that analysis. And I think, and I'm hopeful, as all Seminole Nation is, that they'll do the right thing and make the right choice.
All right, we're out of time for now. Plus, I just got a text that Bob Stoops is scheduled to land in town tomorrow, so let me go check on that.
We'll be back to you. We'll let you know if that happens.
He's Keith, I'm Tom, and this is theosceola.com.